let's update from 1.21.5 to 1.21.6. Alright, we found us back in Terraria once more, and in this tutorial we're going to be updating our 1.21.5 project to 1.21.6. Please once again note that this only works from 1.21.5 to 1.21.6, as the minor versions are very much not minor in their changes in the slightest. There are a plethora of changes where you basically just need to go from 0.1 to 0.3, from 0.3 to 0.4, from 0.4 to 0.5, and now here we are from 0.5 to 0.6, and I genuinely hope that we're not going to have a 0.7, because if we do, I might reconsider some life choices. Regardless though, I'm just kidding, by the way. We're all good. I'm a little bit perturbed by it, but it is fine. So for this, of course, we're once again going to go to our Fabric MC Develop website over here that has us, well, basically all of the different latest versions over here. So we're going to copy over the Minecraft version, the Yarn version, and the Loader version over here. So just select it, Control C, and then in our Gradle properties file, we're going to change this. There we go. Nothing too crazy. And the Fabric API version, we're also going to change as 127 at this point. So quite a little bit of movement over here. As for the snapshot, I've already added this, or this is already 110, so that's going to be fine. And I believe that that's actually everything we need in this case. So we can simply reload the Gradle changes. Once again, this might take up to a couple of minutes or so. Usually it should only take a couple of seconds. For me, it should be super fast because I've already downloaded this. Now, as for the changes, luckily, as you can also see by the length of the video, we're not too bad. So in the Fabric block, of course, has a couple of things mentioned here already. And there is one tiny thing we'll talk about in just a second, where we'll probably have to figure this out in the future in 1.22 or another tutorial series, but we'll see. We'll see. So first of all, we will be greeted by pretty much no issues whatsoever. One of the big changes is going to be done inside of the block entities. So block entities themselves, the write NBT and the read NBT methods are no longer a thing. You might say, oh, okay, how the frick are we supposed to, save our data? Well, there is now the following. There is the write data method and there is the read data method. Now, you might say, okay, that's an interesting choice, but okay, fair enough. This has a write view and a read view. Now, it's like this basically works exactly the same way. So in the write data, right, instead of the write NBT, we write inventories dot write data, passing in the view, passing in the inventory, and then that's it. So as you can see, this method, it's pretty much exactly the same thing. We're just no longer calling it NBT. If we look into the write view class, it works exactly the same way, right? We even have the puts over here that we had with the NBT as well. It's just now differently done, right? It's no longer called NBT, I guess. And in the read one, it's the same way. Inventories dot read data, passing in the view, passing in inventory, and there you go. That's gonna fix the pedestal block entity, although very important to note, the pedestal block entity will now no longer work on client as well. So there was a bug that was where it does not work on the server. So there's a syncing issue. And I believe this is now transferred to the client as well. We will keep this in for the time being. I have not been able to, I've not been really researching any way to fix it as well, but also I've not found a way to fix it. So that's just sadly going to be a thing that we're going to have to live with for the time being. It should work in 1.21.1, although I think that the syncing issue is also still remaining there. It's kind of a bummer. I do think that we need custom networking for this to fully properly work. Regardless, in the growth chamber block entity, here the same way goes, right? We have a write data method now and a read data method now. And here, same thing goes, inventories.write data, passing in the view as well as the inventory. And then here it's view.putInt. And we're actually just going to, let's just copy both of those over. Obviously, NBT no longer exists, but we can literally just replace it with view and you can see that then works. I mean, it couldn't be simpler in this case. And the same thing goes right here where we, in the read NBT, we can literally just take this in. Here, we can read data. We read the data over here. No longer do we need a registry lookup over here. And instead of NBT, it is view. And instead of NBT, it is view. And here, the only difference here is that I believe we need a fallback, and also there's no get.get actually. So you just get int, and there is a fallback that we need to put in. So if this, for example, does not exist, then this would be the value that gets returned. Simple as that. Yeah, those are the two things in the block entities. We continue to data gen. Data gen, I believe there are just a couple of things. So instead of the get or create builder over here, we now use the value lookup builder as the method. So that's a fairly straightforward change. We're just going to change all of those methods. In the item tags, I believe that, yeah, that's the same thing. I believe, yeah, just the value lookup builder over here all works in both of them. Absolutely, totally fine. Then we continue to the models. There is a tiny thing here that is going to be the properties needs a second false. This is if it is oversized in the GUI, and this one was I'm not 100% sure what that was, but it was something about whether or not the there you go, on hand animation on swap. There you go. I don't know why it's always the same with these with the naming of the parameters. Sometimes they don't get a proper name, and then that can be kind of annoying and confusing. But the rest here is fine. I believe that should be that for the time being. Then we can skip a couple of things, but then we need to go to the models and the animations. Now the animations have changed, meaning that well, it's not like they've changed crazily, but they have changed a little bit. This is now no longer an animation over here. This is now an animation definition. Right, so what we want to do is we want to take this, and instead of an animation builder, we now have an animation definition builder. You just want to change this for all of the times that the animation here occurs. Luckily, we only have 2 animations, so that's going to be pretty easily done. And in theory, if you were to now export this from Blockbench, it should also immediately give you the animation definition over here, so that should already work totally fine. Then in the model, we now have this done a little bit differently. So the way that this works now is that inside of the model itself, we're now having a private final animation. So this time it isn't normal animation. We're calling this walking animation. And we also have a second one, and that's going to be the idling animation. Okay. Those two are, of course, inside of the constructor. We're saying this walking animation is equal to mantis animations.anim. This would be the anim mantis walk that create animation passing in the root, and we can duplicate this for the idling animation. Of course, don't forget to change the animation that we wanted to create over here. So walking, it is the mantis animation idle walk over here, and then for the idling, it is mantis idle. All right, that's fair enough. That's okay. And then down here, instead of calling this animate walking, we say this would be the walking animation that apply walking. We no longer need to supply the animation because it already knows what it is. And the same thing goes here, idling animation dot apply this time, and we no longer need to apply this, only the idle animation state, the stage, as well as the speed multiplier, and that fixes the model. So a couple of things that we need to change in the models. Renderer should be fine, render state should be fine, chair renderer is fine, and I believe that the rest here is fine too, because this doesn't have any animations associated with it, so there's no changes. The chair entity, of course, it's the read and write NBT data, so we can delete those methods and implement the 2 read custom data and read and write custom data methods. The mantis has a tiny change here, of course, once again, also with the custom data. There we go. So we want to implement both of those as well. So this would be the write data and the read data. Once again, fairly straightforward. And here, of course, we really only need to add this singular thing, the data tracker. And there we go. So this is going to be view put int of that variant type. And then here we do view get variant. And in this case, because it's an integer, the fallback is 0 and we don't need the get. And there we have it. I believe this should be all that there is to it for the entities. We continue to go along to the items where we are not hit with an error, but actually sort of an amendment. So in the append tooltip, and I believe I've mentioned this in, I think, from 0.3 to 0.4, if I recall correctly, although I'm not quite sure. The append tooltip method is now deprecated, meaning that we shouldn't really use it. It is still available and it should still work, but we shouldn't use it. Now, the changes here are as follows. There is a way to use this via the component tooltip appender registry. So you simply make a custom component that implements the interface tooltip appender, where you literally just add the same thing that we've added via the overwritten method. And then you have to take that component type, you have to register that component type, and then add it via this component tooltip appender registry. I have not really figured out exactly what the frick is going on here, because obviously you apply this to an item stack. I guess you can apply this to an item via when you register this, via the settings. Of course, you can add a component via this, right? Component. I'm not quite sure. And right now I am a little unsure exactly how this is implemented. So we'll basically keep the append tooltip for just the time being. And even though it's deprecated, it should still function. And we'll then, well, redo this, let's say, or do this properly once we get to 122, I'm hoping. I'm really hoping for 122. I'm not hoping for 121.7. At that point, it would be a rough one. Yeah, that would be this. In the other classes, I think we are fine. And I actually think we are mostly done. I think those are the biggest changes. No, not quite. The screen has a tiny change as well. So both screens, we now no longer use the render layer right here, because what we actually use is just a different one, and is a render pipelines.gui textured. So obviously in the background, there's a lot of rendering changes happening. This is most likely geared up all for vibrant visuals, I believe, in the client. Yeah, this is also a thing. This is now called, no, this has just changed its position. It's just a different part of the API, I believe. Let's see. I mean, it is, but also it is now, instead of calling the instance, you now just call the method itself. And here, once again, this is now no longer the render layer. This is now the block render layer. So we can just simply select this, Control R, and replace all of those. And there we go. Now all of them have the cutout render layer. Yes, I believe this should actually be everything. I mean, still quite a few changes, but nothing very complicated, I would say, right? None of those are insanely complicated changes. Like I said, in the background, there's a lot of things happening when it comes to the rendering. I mean, I highly recommend, obviously, I'm going to add this to the description below, right? The changes over here that have been basically sort of, well, taken a look at right here. There are a lot of changes in the background, and I guess we'll see most of that come to fruition, let's say, when we look at 122, in the hopes that this is the next, the next version. But regardless of that, let's run the Minecraft client. Let's see if this works. I believe this should work. I would doubt. I mean, we'll see. You know, that's the name of the game. Let's just let this run and let's see. Would you look at that? That gas is very happy, and indeed it is. And let's just go into the 1.21.5 world. That should also work totally fine. And we have obviously a broken mantis that was broken before. This should still work. This also works, I guess. Oh, apparently there's no syncing issue here for some reason. It might be the case because this is an older pedestal, or for some reason. The syncing issue will remain in the server though. So just do keep that in mind. And that one still works. Anything else that we want to take a look at over here? Maybe, possibly. I mean, that still works. I believe the bow still has an issue. No, it actually does not. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, yeah, that looks pretty neat. And I think that that's pretty much kind of exactly what we need. So there you go. That is updated to 1.21.6. Awesome. As per usual, everything is, of course, linked in the description below. But that's going to be it for this tutorial right here. I hope you found this useful and you learned something new. And I'll see you all in the next tutorial or tutorial series, whatever that might be. Until then. So, yeah.